Welcome back everyone. Now, due to popular demand, we are going to be starting a series talking about French culinary techniques. And to build upon what we've seen on our last video, when we make the sauce grenobloise, we're going to be talking in this episode about pan sauces. What is the technique that sits behind pan sauces, and what are the components that make pan sauces, and also what sets French pan sauces apart from the rest. Now, if you're curious, let's keep watching. Now, pan sauces, this is the buzzword that's going around at the moment. Everybody wants to learn about pan sauces, but in France, pan sauces are kind of an old thing, and it's based on a technique called the sauté déglacé. Sauté is to sauté, sautéing, and déglacé is to deglaze. It is a technique that is taught to first-year students, and the process is simple. Learn how to sear a piece of meat and follow up by making a sauce that goes with that piece of meat. That's all it is. And so it's all about the pairing and that goes between the two. So in a piece of beef, you're going to have a beef stock with other ingredients that go with the beef, and so on and so forth. And the different for lamb, for veal, for chicken, etc., etc. It's a great technique because you can do it at home very, very easily. In terms of cookware, what should you use? Frying pan, yes, but in France, the iconic pan is this, le sautoir, okay, the sauté pan, the French-style sauté pan. A large surface like a frying pan to sear your meat, high edges to have plenty of liquid in there, and a wide surface to allow for fast reduction of sauces. A lot of chefs use this when they make sauces, and it's actually a great pan. I'm going to be using it, of course, for the demonstration. Another thing you may wonder about pan sauces is that what really sets the French sauces apart from the rest? For me, I think it's just that sheer number of sauces that we have already. And if I'm asking you right now, how many sauces, French sauces, do you know out of your head? Or that you've seen on the internet? Well, there's maybe like 10 or 15 or something like that. But in fact, when I'm looking at my reference guide of sauces, we got more than 200 sauces. Even 200, can you imagine? So it's mad. So when you go to Paris and you may have tried a sauce you've never seen before, you think, oh my God, the chef invented something. No, they didn't. They're just using some of the sauce that people are not making very often. And I love doing this because you can come up with plenty of sauces. What we're going to do today, the sauce madeira, the madeira sauce, one of my favorite sauces ever. But let's get started and have a look first at what are the core components that make the pan sauce. Let's go. The first element you need, of course, in a pan sauce is the meat. I'm going to be using here a simple steak. It's a beef steak, but remember that the meat can be anything. Usually it can be a fillet, being a steak, a piece of pork, a filet mignon, maybe a lamb chop even if you wanted to, a piece of chicken. It does not matter, but you need something that is suited for pan frying, and that's going to be seared because we're going to want to have these beautiful caramelized juices at the bottom of our pan. And now for the big question, are we using onions for pan sauces in French cooking or shallots? Some people tend to think that shallots are just fancy onion, but they're anything but. They are really two drastically different things. If you look at it, this is an onion, this is a shallot, and even if you were to grow a shallot enormous size in your garden and your garden bed, it will never transform into an onion because they are two different things. And you can see this with the color. The shallot has got a typical kind of red little tinge like this, a bit like a red onion, while the onion, the standard onion, is that kind of white color. But there's more to this than just the look why we're using shallots in French cooking. The reason for pan sauces is that shallots cook much faster than onions. Onions, in general, 10 to 15 minutes to be properly cooked. Shallots, in a mere minutes, they will be burned. This is why you're going to want to use shallots in all of your pan sauces. The size, of course, the dicing is important. You want something really, really small. This is too big. If you have something too big, what's going to happen is going to take longer to cook, and if you don't spend enough time, it's going to have that kind of raw, oniony, shalloty taste in your sauce. This is why you have always a very small dicing and you use a shallot instead of onion, except if the recipe specifically calls for onion, but that's another story. And now let's talk about the deglazing. Now this is the fun part where you're going to be pouring the alcohol over your shallots and detach these caramelized juices in your pan, and you're going to create the first flavor profile of your sauce. You're paving the way to what's to come. And usually that happens with red wine or white wine. I personally always use a Sauvignon Blanc for the white wine and a Cabernet Sauvignon for the red. I'm using French wine, not because I'm trying to be chauvinistic, because I personally think that they are rounder, fruitier, and they really bring a type of taste I just could not find in New World wines. I've tried many Sauvignon Blanc you know, from the New World, and there's always a lot of acidity, not enough fruitiness, and it just does not taste the same. It is up to you to try whatever you want, but give a go at French wine, make the difference between New World and Old World, and see what you like best. But red wine and white wine is the beginning. In France, the reason the sauces are so different is that we also go beyond just wine. Okay, but wine is the beginning. This is what you learn at school, the very basic first year. But after that, chefs use all kinds of things, like fortified wine. Here you can see madeira wine, sherry, white port, red port, cognac, armagnac, anything. This is all the kind of flavor profile you can create, and it will make your sauce stand out compared to the standard sauce that's just used wine. So it's important to keep this in mind. And in that demonstration, we're going to be using actually madeira, so you can see what exactly it brings. All right, and now let's look at the next component, of course, the stock, very important. Now, stock is one of the most important pillar in French cooking, and when it comes to pan sauces, have a good stock like this. This is a beef stock that I've made. Nice and gelatinous, it's got nice and dark color, it's going to be perfect for a pan sauce. It is really crucial because the stock is what makes the sauce. If you have something that's got no taste, your sauce is going to lack in taste, of course. Now, when you look at this stock, you may think, oh my God, he's made a special stock from scratch. And yes, I kind of made it from scratch or halfway there, because this is an actual recipe from our cookbook where I'm doing a little trick that we'll share with you in a recipe showcase on how to do this, where I'm using a store-bought stock and transform it into a powerhouse of taste in about 30 to 40 minutes max. And this is the result that you can see in front of you, and I'm going to be using this as my sauce base to make that special sauce that we're going to be making, which is of course the madeira sauce, aka the sauce madeira. So now we've seen all the components and we've explained everything, and now it's time for the demonstration. With all this explanation, you may think, my God, pan sauces are difficult, but look at the ingredients. This is what I need to make a little bit of an advanced pan sauce. So this is a mushroom and madeira wine pan sauce. Sounds fancy, but look, I've got steaks, 200 ml of beef stock, 3 button mushroom, a teaspoon of shallot, a dash of madeira wine, I think it's 25 ml, salt and pepper, and that's about it. So you see, you don't need much to make something already quite good. Now for the slicing and dicing, aka the mise en place, make sure you first measure everything, your madeira wine, your stock. You put your stock in a small saucepan and you heat it up to sterilize it. You never know, there might be something. To bring it to the boil at least for 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, and for the slicing, we're going to be slicing the mushroom. You can quarter them if you want, or square them. It's up to you. Thinly diced shallot, and I'm going to add a little bit of chopped parsley towards the end, but that's about it. Now, let's go on the stove. The first thing I'm going to do here is to start with a pan with a bit of olive oil and butter, and I'm going to pan fry the mushrooms because I want to win some time. Okay, when you make a pan sauce, you really don't have much time at all. So salt and pepper, a good medium to medium high, and we're going to color these mushrooms. My mushrooms are ready. I don't want too much coloring. I'm going to reserve this into a bowl and we're done. And now let's practice the sauté déglacé. What is important to know first off is that you should not be using a huge pan. Okay, this is just the right size for my 2 steaks. You don't want to have too much free space around because the oil and everything could start to burn around. So always choose the pan that's just the right size. You don't want something too cramped, but not something too large neither. So here I've got just a little bit of space in between. It's good. Seasoning of the steaks, I always do this just before putting the steak in a pan with salt and pepper. And what we're going to try to do here is to sear the steak on a medium-high heat, to slowly sear the steaks and making sure they release as much juices as they can. So you get all these juices that's going to caramelize at the bottom of the pan, and this is what we're going to be using as the base for our sauce. And that gives you taste and that gives you color. Okay. My meat has been seasoned. I've got about a good tablespoon of oil in here. I'm using sunflower oil, and I'm gonna wait for it to heat up. You don't want to be like super smoking hot. As I said, you want it hot, just enough so that it starts stirring. Usually when the oil starts to kind of move around the pan like water does, it's ready. Perfecto. We're gonna put the meat in. Now regarding the cooking times of the meat, you want to sear the meat until it's up to your liking. So it could be rare, medium rare, but usually medium rare is fine. The best way is to use a food thermometer to know where you're going, and I'll give you all the temperature recommended for these kinds of level of doneness in the recipe. Now after 2 or 3 minutes, I'm gonna start to turn my meat on here. And you can see under there, there's some caramelized juices, and as you can see these? That's what you want. Now, one of the things that I tend to do when it comes to this is to really move the steaks around when I turn them to have these caramelized juices a bit everywhere, and that really helps. So a good 5 minutes in, my steaks are ready. I'm just going to temporarily turn the heat off, okay, just to decompose the steps, put this on the plate and cover with foil so we can work on the rest of the sauce. Okay. So what we see on here are the famous caramelized juices. My heat is on low for now. I'm going to add first the shallots, use the rest of the heat in the pan to kind of have these shallots. You see, the shallots is not to have a shallot sauce, it's really just to add a little flavor, and a lot of time they're not even necessary. And it just picks up all the oil that's left in here, and that's about it. When you're here, you can immediately add your Madeira wine and start that scraping at the bottom. Once you're here, we're going to reduce until you've got what, you know, a teaspoon or two maximum in there. You want some flavor, and immediately after that, what I'm going to do is raise my heat and then pour my stock in. It is very, very simple. It is an extremely rudimentary sauce we're making here. It's really the base of the base, the sauce. But you got the taste of the Madeira wine in there, hidden. You got a bit of shallot, and now I've got my stock. We're gonna simply bring this to a boil and reduce the whole lot. The sauté that we've done, the sautéing has been done. We've sautéed the steak, we've seared the steak, we've done the déglacé, which is the deglazing, and now this is the reduction. We're concentrating the flavor by reducing the sauce so it kind of becomes a little bit syrupy. It's almost there. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add these mushrooms that I had before. I don't have to cook them, and they're going to really kind of get that coating, that shiny coating. Look at this. It's like a shine when the sauce really reduces. And when you make sauces, it is always at the end that everything happens. I'm going to reduce my heat because we're almost done here. So you see, when my sauce has reduced, it goes from a very interesting kind of runny kind of stock to a glaze-like consistency. And this is syrupy. And the mushrooms are going to mingle very nicely with everything. And absolutely love Madeira with mushroom. They work absolutely great. And I think here, we're done. Let me turn the heat off and show you what we've got here. Okay, look at this. This is just a pan sauce. You see how syrupy that is? But it is very, very short. And sometimes you may think, oh, there's not much sauce, but there is a bonus that comes. And that is coming from the leftover juices from the meat that I've got in here. So you put all the sauce in here, and I'm going to warm this up a little bit, add a touch of butter, and we're done. My sauce is smoking, as you can see here. What I'm going to do from here, I'm going to turn off the heat, and now it's time to add the butter. You never want to add the butter when it's boiling. No more boiling from here, okay? And one of my little sneaky thing that I'm doing always when I make this sauce, half a teaspoon of fresh Madeira in there, and I'm going to add my butter. And you don't whisk or anything like this. I'm going to kind of swirl or use my wooden spoon to mingle everything in there, very, very gently, and wait for that butter to melt, and we're ready. Look at this sauce. Oh, and that's just a pan sauce. Imagine. So here we are again. This is a rudimentary sauce, but bistro style. We've got your steak, of course, on the camera. It takes time. And look at that sauce that we've got on here. So you can drizzle that sauce around. And it's got a few mushrooms as well. I'm going to put some here, maybe a few over there. And I'm telling you, Madeira and mushroom is a match made in heaven. And that's maybe I throw a bit of parsley on there, just for the color, and then a drizzle of sauce, all on the side on here, and boom, let's taste. All right, let's grab a piece of this. And this is really that French style steak when everything is drenched into things in there. I'm just gonna cut a piece of meat, try to put this in a sauce, and I know the mushrooms and everything, they don't it remind you a bistro style thing, a few mushrooms in there, a bit of the steak. I need some fries. This kind of meat is not really the tender, there's a bit of the fat in there, and always we need plenty of sauce, because if you don't have enough sauce, you're going to be wanting sauce, and you want sauce for the bread as well. I mean, imagine if you don't have enough sauce, you'll die, surely. Let's finish this. Wow, that was good. Let's wrap up. Now I have to say that the madeira sauce is really one of my all-time favorites, and it is a very old one. It's a sauce you will see in the Escoffier Good Culinaire over and over again, and it is such a classic but yet so simple, and that really showcases that pan sauces don't have to be complicated even if you make them a little bit more intricate. So we will be practicing with more pan sauces later on. For now I'm gonna tell you to try this one. If you don't have madeira wine, don't worry, you can use white wine instead. It will still be good, and we will be continuing on deep diving on this French culinary technique and see how we can use them at home. Now if you're looking for more details, we have made an entire written guide that's going to explain all the ins and outs of French pan sauces on our website. You will find a link in the video description. I hope you enjoy, and use the comment section to tell me all about it. If you try that sauce, tell me what you think. I'll see you all next time. Take care all. Bye bye.
My appetite, don't leave me